Okay, hello again, and welcome to part 2 of the JET interview process. For all of you that are getting those letters that say you got to the next stage in the JET selection process, congratulations. You know, a lot of people have said that once you get past the application screening, that really the interview is not so much to weed people out. Well, is that what I'm trying to say? But the job is at that point yours to lose. I don't know if that makes sense. In other words, they're not so much looking to disqualify you or interview you to make sure you're qualified, but they just want, you know, they have to interview you to make sure that you're not just some crazy person that, you know, was able to fill out an application. Because somebody can look one way on paper, but if you talk to them and they're like, hi, yes, I'd like to go to Japan. You know, they're that type of person. They're not exactly well suited for this job. So, you know, go in there with confidence. Feel like, you know, I've got the job. I'm just, you know, confirming everything that they liked about me on the application in order to, you know, tell them that I am the right person to be going to Japan. Okay, so we left off with who would be interviewing you from part 1. And I mentioned that it'll probably be a professional person, a Japanese person, and a former jet. Like I said though, that, you know, it can vary, so, you know, if that's not the case, don't get thrown off when you walk into the room. But basically the interviews last 15 or 20 minutes. You know, they can't really spend longer than that, even if they're enjoying your company, because, you know, there'll be other people waiting and they have a whole schedule of people they have to get through. Right away when I walked into my interview, the Japanese man who I mentioned before, who spoke very good English, because, you know, he was Japanese American, it wasn't like he was from Japan, right away was interested in some of the things I'd written in my letter of intent about the miniseries and the novel Shogun. He was familiar with the TV show and asked me about it, and that got us onto the subject of movies. And I started to talk about Toshiro Mifune, my favorite Japanese actor, and how the actor, the only actor, you know, but he had never won an Academy Award, and the only actor to ever win one was from Bridge on the River Kwai. And so we started having this whole little side conversation right at the beginning, and it really set the tone for the whole interview. I felt it was great that he did that and allowed me to talk a little bit like that, because it really relaxed me, because I was, you know, very nervous, like you will be. And I felt like, you know, that was very much who I am. I love movies, you know, I love certain aspects of Japanese history and culture, and it allowed me to talk a little bit about that. And then, you know, of course they had questions. So what will they base these questions on? Well, of course, the main thing that they're going to go by is your application and your letter of intent. You know, the information that you put in your application, which they generally have copies of in front of them, and they'll, you know, maybe page through, and your letter, your 2-page letter of intent, which they probably read, you know, 5 minutes before you came into the room. You know, certain things will stick out with them and they might ask you about it. Some of it's just to get you talking and to see, you know, how you are in front of brand new people that you don't know. You know, how do you perform, for lack of a better word. Some jets would argue that you don't have to be the most extroverted person, and I've certainly met jets who I'm like, why the hell did you want to do this job? Which I feel like you do have to be a little extroverted to be a good, effective ALT, at least at the junior high and elementary school level. High school is maybe a little different, but I've met people who were so sort of shy and to me, another like Westerner, let alone to a person that, you know, if they don't speak Japanese, etc. And you wonder, like, how did they get through the interview process? So it's hard to know exactly what they're looking for. But I think a certain level of gankiness, you know, an up attitude, a very kind of, you know, I'm happy to be here. I'm really glad that, you know, I got this far in the process and I want to go to Japan. So, be very familiar with your own application. Know all the things that you put down. You know, obviously you made copies of it before you mailed it out. And, you know, reread your letter of intent. Know about, you know, everything that's in there. You know, that sounds very obvious, but that's where they're going to pull their questions from. One of the obvious questions they're going to ask you probably is, why did you choose to you know, to live in Nantuka? You know, say you put down Fukuoka or Kobe or Hokkaido, you know, or say you put urban versus rural, or, you know, something like that. I think on my application I put, at the time when I did my application, there was urban, semi-rural, and rural. And so I had put semi-rural because I knew that not a lot of jets got placed in urban settings, but I was, you know, I had only ever lived in big cities, and I explained that to them. So they asked me, you know, how would you feel about being placed in a very rural place, away from big cities? And I said basically that I'd be fine with that. I think it would certainly be a period of adjustment. I've only ever lived in, you know, San Diego and Dallas and big cities, Los Angeles. So my experience is with large environment, but, you know, I'm willing to embrace the whole notion of change and you know, see, you know, go with the adventure that the whole program is going to be about. So that is definitely, I think, one thing that they will ask you. Why did you choose whatever you put down on your application, your destination of choice? If you put, I'll go anywhere, maybe they'll say, okay, they'll pose some hypotheticals. You know, well, what if we sent you to, you know, upper Hokkaido? You know, how would you be in 3 feet of snow? You know, what if we sent you to Okinawa? You know, would you be okay with it, you know, no snow and, you know, a very mild winter and, you know, lots of other Americans around, etc. So that's an obvious question. The most obvious question that they're going to ask you in some way or another is, why do you want to go to Japan? You know, why did you choose jet? Why do you want to do this? And have a good answer. You know, think about it. It doesn't have to be a long answer. It doesn't have to be, you know, that deep or anything. You just need to have an answer. And, you know, practice maybe with somebody else, a parent, a sibling, a friend, and, you know, have them listen to your answers and then say, you know, well, what did you think? You know, was that a good answer? What did you think of my reason? Okay, let's see. One thing I was asked was, please discuss a time when you've had to overcome a hardship or an obstacle in your professional life or your personal life. So I think at the time, what did I choose? To be honest, I don't really remember. I don't think I chose anything personal because, to be honest, I've had a pretty good life. I might have chosen something to do with college, you know, some class or something that I was struggling with and how I had to refocus and buckle down and study hard, or yeah, I can't even remember what I put. But that type of question is very common in any interview setting. You know, in a job interview, it'll obviously be, you know, what do you think your strengths are? Well, also, what do you think some of your weaknesses are? And you always, of course, have to frame your weaknesses in some positive spin. You know, so they might ask you that in the way of, like, how do you think you'll adjust to this new culture that you're going to. Okay, well, that I think is going to do it for part 2. I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you. I hope that it's helpful, and we'll be back with part 3 soon and more later. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.